Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara Designs, and today I have this rainbow and roses thank you card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to cut my cardstock down. As always, I like to mat with a piece of black cardstock. So I have an A2 base, and then I'm cutting down a black mat about an eighth of an inch smaller than my A2 base. And then I'm going to also cut down a piece of distress watercolor cardstock. You can see here I have them in the A2 size. I'm just going to take off about a quarter of an inch off of this smaller than the A2 size, so you get a really thin border from the base, from the mat, and then you have the colored panel on top. Hopefully the sound is okay for this. I'm actually house sitting for my parents at the moment, so I have to use my AirPods to record my audio, and hopefully it's not too bad. And then I'm going to jump right into stamping on the Distress Watercolor cardstock. So I used the Simon Says Stamp Spring Bouquet stamp set, that's the stamp you see here, and some Versafine Onyx black ink, and I'm going to ink in both corners. I did this because I wanted to be able to do my rainbow kind of off of the edge, and this floral stamp really allowed that because there's the leaves kind of go off the edge, but then there's some space, so I could color a bit more in there, and I really thought that would be pretty. And I am going to stamp it twice. You saw me bring in my reverse tweezers to remove a cat hair because, well, you guys know I have several cats, so I do have a tendency to have to chase cat hair around my craft space. And I'm going to stamp it in the other corner as well. I just thought this would be a fun design. Though it is a bit more stark than I meant it to be, I think that it turned out really pretty anyways, so I'm pretty happy with it. But I did stamp twice on this side too, just because I am using the textured side of the Distress cardstock. And then I did bring in my Wow Clear Matte Dull embossing powder. So this dries matte and it's not shiny at all. So it's shiny when you heat set it, but once it's kind of cooled off, it's dull. So it gives you a really cool lift, but without any of the shine. So here I'm going to show you, this is why you didn't get to see me actually emboss the embossing powder. This beautiful kitten, this is Ember. She was laying on my desk, and I knew that if I busted out my embossing gun, it would have scared the bejesus out of her. So I actually left the room to heat emboss it. So that's why you guys don't get to see it. And I thought I'd leave this little clip of Ember sleeping on my desk for you. So to color the background, I really wanted to use these distress reinkers, and I have two very small drops of color in each little well that you can see here. And this is a ceramic palette, and I chose to put them in there just because then I'm going to leave them there. And then I can reactivate them again later with just a little bit of water. So I thought that would be kind of a fun idea. I do not own a yellow reinker. I don't know how that's possible. I'm slowly collecting them. I don't have them all at this point. I do own every Oxide ink pad, but I don't own all of the reinkers for them. So apparently I don't have a yellow one. So I did have to bring in my yellow Oxide ink pad, which you saw me smoosh just down on my mat there, so that I could have that yellow color because I do want to work in rainbow. So for my rainbow, I used picked raspberry, carved pumpkin, cracked pistachio, peacock feathers, and wilted violet. And that's the Distress Oxide reinkers you see me that I put in that palette. And then for my yellow, I did use squeezed lemonade, but I had to use my Distress Oxide ink pad. Now, you can absolutely use your ink pads for this. You don't need to use your reinkers. However, the reinkers are a lot more vibrant because their purpose is to reink your whole ink pad, right? So two little drops kind of in that little palette there is a ton of color. So really the yellow was a bit more difficult to lay down just because it was from the ink pad, not straight from the reinker. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. But again, you could use your ink pads for this technique. You don't need to do what I'm doing. And I was too lazy to go up and get more water because, again, Ember was sleeping there. So I just kind of, and that's me petting her, as you can see. So I'm just spraying my paintbrush with some water from my little distress sprayer. You don't need to do that. Get some water. Don't be lazy like me. I just really wanted to get this done, right? So I'm sitting here just kind of with my ink sitting in this little palette, and I just really wanted to color it. So I'm kind of being lazy. Just get more water. I just didn't, but you should. And then I did have to redo my yellow to actually, sorry. So this is what my idea came in. So I wanted to do this rainbow of color in the center of my card. And then I really wanted to extend out the outside. So this is what you see me doing here. I've brought in a smaller paintbrush so that I can just kind of bring the colors. And on one side, I'm going to do the yellow, orange, and pink, which is squeeze lemonade, carved pumpkin and picked raspberry. And then on the other side, I'm going to start with the squeezed lemonade, and I am going to bring in the other four colors. Realistically, they don't line up. It's not perfect, but I just thought that it would be really pretty to have those other colors kind of pop through on the outside of this, because it just kind of added that like idea that the color was going outside of where the panel is. So on this side, I add the squeezed lemonade, the cracked pistachio, the peacock feathers, and then the wilted violet. And I love how this turned out. Though my lines of color are a lot more stark than I intentionally meant them to be, I still think that it turned out super pretty, and I love how it looks. And then I just sprayed on a little bit of clean clear water from my distress sprayer just to get a little bit of texture and interest in the background. You don't need to do this if that's not your jam. I like the splash marks. I like that kind of faded look, that little bit of interest, but by no means do you have to do that if you prefer a more solid look to your colors. That's just because I like that look. And then I am also going to bring in some perfect pearls that I just keep mixed up on a little mini mister bottle on my desk. Again, this is just to add interest into the background. I love shiny, I love sparkly, I love, glittery. So I do have a tendency to go a little overboard, and I think that this card, I did go a bit overboard, but I love how it turned out. And then I felt like my roses didn't stand up enough against this vibrant background. So I chose to go in with 3 neutral grays of my Copic markers, because this is embossed now, keep in mind. This is not generally an appropriate paper for Copic markers. Usually you want a very smooth paper. This is a very textured paper, so there is the potential to damage your nibs. I don't care about that because you can buy replacement nibs, so if that happens, I would just replace them. And I like to use my tools how I want to use them. So be aware, though, that potential is there. So just, you could theoretically damage your markers. I didn't have any issues. I don't touch the embossing powder when I do this. But I did go in with N1, N3, and N5. And I'm just adding shading to mostly the center or the inside of the petals to kind of create a look of more dimension. You don't need to do this. Again, the card was beautiful as it was. I just felt like the roses needed to stand up against that background a little bit more. So this is how I chose to do that. There are loads of ways you could do this. This is just how I did it. And I always start with my lightest color, go to my mid-tone and then my darkest, back to my mid-tone and then to my lightest, because that gives me the best control of where my dark color is. And these markers will dry back. Like here right now on the rose that I'm working on, it is quite dark. It will dry back and it won't look as dark once we're done. So then I just have to adhere everything together. So one of my good friends actually saw this card and she asked if she could give it to her mom. So of course I'm more than happy for that. So I did give it to her. But I was wondering, and my mom has asked me this several times, why I don't sell my cards. And I was wondering what your guys' thoughts were on that. I've been kind of considering the idea of maybe listing my cards on my website, and if someone was interested, they could come and purchase the card from my website and then I would mail it to them, with a blank inside, or if you wanted me to write a message to you and you got to pick the card, that would be fine, that kind of thing. So just give me your thoughts on that. Do you think there would be any interest in that, or do you think that that's not really something you'd prefer to do? I don't know. Tell me what your thoughts are and we can kind of go from there, because I'm not sure if I should sell them. I know some people do sell them, some people don't sell them. I pondered maybe making it a reward tier on my Patreon, because I would like to focus on Patreon in 2024. So I kind of thought maybe that would be an interesting thing. Like you could get just a random card from me. I would send you a card. I don't know. So give me your thoughts on that. If you think that you'd be interested in buying a card, or you'd love that as a Patreon reward tier, that kind of stuff. Just let me know your thoughts on it, and we'll kind of make a discussion out of it, because it is definitely an interesting thought. For my sentiment, I did bring in my Misti again. This sentiment is from that same stamp set, that Spring Bouquet stamp set, and it's a really great thank you card. And of course, you guys know I had to add a few more sparkles, so I did bring in just a couple of my Vanilla Luster Fusion sequins that I love to use, because I find that they're a great sparkle without stealing the show, whereas my pearls, they're quite obvious and quite bright, so I kind of like these sequins every once in a while when I want something a little more subtle. So that's the card I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday, and I do have some fun videos coming up from Spellbinders. But let me know your thoughts on whether you'd buy a card or you think it's a great idea for a Patreon reward. Let me know your thoughts on that. I'm just a little curious. as to what you think the direction I should maybe go with that is. But yeah, so thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this card. Tell me your thoughts about the card. Do you like it? Did you think it's really pretty? What would you change if you would do something different? I'd love to hear. All right, guys, I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.